All right. I want to warn you right up front that this segment is probably going to be the most controversial video in the entire course, which is kind of a bold choice by me to front load it at the beginning of the course, but it is that important. It shouldn't be controversial, but I've talked to a lot of writers and it is. So, topic is writing to market, which a lot of people view as selling out. Now we'll get to that in a second. I do want to make a distinction that chasing trends is different than writing to market. Chasing trends is, say, a body horror movie ends up making like $200 million at the box office, and then all these people start writing more body horror movies. Or some like broad comedy, some mashup, even better, like a horror mashup comedy ends up making a ton of money, and then everyone starts writing like mashup comedies. That's just chasing whatever the latest trend is. Writing to market is a mindset that your work is going to be marketable to the readers and executives who have the power to get things done in Hollywood, okay? The reason that it becomes controversial is a lot of writers view it as selling out. Now, a lot of writers say, I got into this to write what I want and only what I want. They don't look at themselves as salesmen or saleswomen. They just look at themselves as creatives. They want nothing to do with marketing. Now, this is a course about building a career as a screenwriter. I am trying not to say definitives in this course because it's your writing and it's your career. You can do whatever you want, okay? If you want to write like a bunch of unmarketable stuff, you're welcome to do that. But what I have found that ends up happening is for the love of writing, writers will finish one screenplay or 5 or 10, and then they have trouble getting someone to read it, much less buy it, and then they're like, ugh. I mean, I love the ability to write whatever I want, but I would like to make some money on it. But by then they've already written 5 or 10 screenplays. I don't know about you. I enjoy writing, but I want my writing to be sold and made into movies and to make me money. Writing screenplays is hard work. I mean, it's not coal mining. Let's be honest. Like, it's not steel mill work. It's not coal mining. But you're putting hours and hours of effort into crafting stories, and I want people in Hollywood to read them and like them, and then throw money at me, and then spend millions of dollars to make them into movies that people enjoy. I have written a ton of things that went nowhere. Like, they're just collecting figurative digital dust on my hard drive, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't ever want to write something again if it doesn't have the potential to sell, because I put things out before and no one even wanted to read them, and it hurts. Like, it hurts so bad. Now, if you strictly just want to write screenplays for love of the game, you're welcome to do that, but there is another option, and it is self-publishing. Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing is 100% free. There is no barrier to entry. The one thing is you can publish your screenplays. No one wants to read screenplay format. Like, even people in Hollywood don't love screenplay format. It is not pleasing to the eye. It is very boring. I personally and a number of other writers have published a number of our screenplays in the past, and we got no interest in any book readers, because book readers want to read in book format. So the short version is, like, if you want to write for kind of love of the game and get your story out there, and you don't really care if it sells that much, you can just convert your screenplay over to book format. Most screenplays are between about 13,000 words and 24,000 words, so it comes out to a novella length. But just by converting it from screenplay format into regular book form, you will see a jump in readership. But since this is a course about selling screenplays, let me get back to it. the writing to market, yes, you could look at it a number of ways. You could look at it as selling out, but I look at it as buying in and giving readers, viewers, executives what they want. Now I know there's an old saying from William Goldman, no one knows anything. Technically that's true to a point. But in terms of marketability and writing to market, there are certain genres that exist. They've existed since the beginning of movies to the beginning of literature. Comedy, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, these are categories. There's a reason they're categories, because enough people wanted stories that were like that they created names for those categories. And in terms of those different genres, there's different expectations. Like in a thriller, the expectation is that there will be thrills. I know it sounds super obvious, but like in a comedy, you want it to be funny. In an action movie, you want there to be adventure. You want these things. So yes, in the specific sense, no one knows anything, but in the broader sense, people do know. Like, they want horror movies, they want thriller screenplays. In terms of like the writing to market, there are some genres that have fallen out of favor over the years, like things like musicals. They probably make fewer musicals in Hollywood than like at any point in the last 50 years. There was a time when they were just pumping them out like crazy. Like there was a time that Westerns were like the #1 genre, and now Westerns, for the most part, unless you're Taylor Sheridan, like not a lot of Westerns are getting sold. Like I said, one guy in Hollywood is basically the entire Western genre as a whole. They used to do a lot more period pieces too, but they're really expensive. Either you have to build the actual sets or you got to use CGI, and so they don't make as many period pieces as they used to. My genre that I prefer is super broad comedies, and that is mostly like a straight to streaming thing now. There's probably been 10 total like comedies that went to theater in the last year. And so even if you're going to write those genres, there are genre conventions that you should study and see like what do viewers want out of this genre and study it. But in terms of writing a market too, try to be conscious, like if you're trying to sell like a musical in this modern age, or if you're trying to sell like a Western, or if you're trying to sell like a Western musical, like honestly, like Western musicals have never been a thing. So like that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about writing a market. People are always in Hollywood always looking for horror movies because they are super cheap to film. It's not high risk. There's also a huge ceiling. Like you could make a horror movie for $1 million and it might make $100 million at the box office. That's huge for a small production company or a studio. Whereas there's other genres you can't take huge risks on in the way you used to. But back to the whole concept of writing to market, if you buy in, it really makes it easier to make the reader happy, because generally like the genre they want and the conventions of that genre. And so you're not like, if they want this and you're giving them that, it makes it much, much harder to sell. And the thing is, you are a salesman or woman, and your sales pitch is your screenplay itself. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's very few writers that like want to write a 120-page screenplay and then just have it do nothing. Like that hurts. It hurts so much. The thing with the writing a market too is the time to think about the marketing of your screenplay. The best time is actually before you start actually writing the screenplay. Now, I know it sounds counterproductive. A lot of writers, they want to write the script, and then when it's done, they want to figure out how to market it. But you're better off actually thinking about, is this concept marketable before you spend the time to write the script? Because like once you've already written the script, if it's not going to be a crowd pleaser that's an easy sell for Hollywood, it's going to be very difficult for you, and it's really hard to go back and do a page one rewrite at that point. It's much easier like at the logline stage, just like the general concept logline before you've even outlined stage, to think like, okay, if I were to pitch this, is it like a good simple one-line elevator pitch? I know it, like, this is why this is controversial, because people don't want to think like this as writers. They just want to write their stories, and I get it. I just want to write my stories too, but I want to make money on my stories. So if you think of it like this, like you come up with, 5 or 6, 5, 10 log lines, which would be the easiest to sell, like has the broadest appeal in a genre that Hollywood still makes a ton of, and is going to be not like $200 million to make, because you could write whatever you want, and it could turn, if it's amazing, it could turn into a calling card. But it's very difficult as a first-time writer with no rep to be like, hey, here's like this huge superhero movie or this huge action sci-fi thing. It would cost like $150 million. Like I've never sold a screenplay to anyone, but hey, Netflix, you want to buy this? It's just really hard to do. I'd say impossible. I don't want to say impossible, so that's why I say it's very hard to do. But yeah, like, so you come up with like 5 or 10 log lines, just give it a go. And if you run them by people and they're like, oh my God, that's a great idea, you probably hit on a very marketable idea. And then so as you write the script, oh, I already got it. Like, this script's going to be great, as opposed to here's like this coming of age thing, in like 17th century France with mimes and stuff like that, and then you go and you write the whole thing. You spend like months writing it and rewriting it and rewriting it, and you're ready to send it out. And then people are like, okay, well, what's the idea? And it's like 17th century coming of age mime script. And they're like, oh, okay. If you've ever done a couple of those kinds of, not like mimes in particular, but if you've ever done those kinds of scripts in general, and then gotten the collective shrug, it really, it's really deflated. And so that's why I say, kind of buy into what could be really sellable about your script. But then also, if you come up with a really marketable concept, you can outline it and then put all these things that'll be crowd pleasing throughout the screenplay as you're writing it. Like I said, though, a lot of beginner writers that have written no scripts, or 1 or 2 or 5 scripts, they can be very, very stubborn, and they'll say things like, I'm just going to write whatever I want. The one caveat I will put out there is that there are kind of 2 paths. There are the natural inclination for every writer, and then what is marketable, and sometimes they perfectly align. So for example, if you love writing horror, or you love writing thrillers, then guess what? It's going to be way easier to you, because you might already be subconsciously writing to market. But if, like, for example, you like writing musicals, it's gonna be tougher. If you like writing like sci-fi westerns or whatever, it's gonna be tougher. But if your natural passion and inclination is in a marketable category, then you might even be writing to market without even realizing it, and that is amazing. Like, I can't tell you how great that is for you. This video is actually more for people who felt like they were born in the wrong decade. Like, I should have been writing like 80s comedies. I was like 3 years old though, so it doesn't, obviously I didn't. But so some of us you don't have to do anything, but you find yourself wanting to try to become more marketable. Like, for example, confession, I have like 50 to 100 scripts. That's a lot of scripts. Like, I wish that I had bought in to the idea of coming up with more marketable concepts and then starting the script from there, as opposed to, I'm going to write this, and then when I get here, figure out how to market it, So it's a cautionary tale. Like, I'm not trying to be harsh. If anything, I'm hoping that you don't make the mistakes that I made years before, you know? But yeah, think about it. The best marketing that you could do for your script happens before you write the first word. Trust me.